Hello everyone, this is RaySpace in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Real Solar System and Realism Overhaul. I am here to present a novel lunar landing mission launched by the shuttle. I did all this during Twitch live streams, and I've been working up to it in recent videos in my Realism Overhaul Sandbox series. And the idea is that we are going to be using an ion stage to transfer the lander ahead of time. The lander is this lander. We have the Lynx cabin, which is a little over 3 tons in dry mass, so it's heavier than the lunar module from Apollo, but lighter than a lot of other lunar landing missions being planned these days. It has a hydrogen-oxygen stage at the bottom of it that's powered by a RL-10 variant, and we'll talk more about that later. And then this blue thing is the xenon gas tank for the ion engine on the tail. The ion engine is modeled as 10 X3 ion thrusters, so these are legit real ion thrusters. I'll eventually end up tweaking their thrust to make sure they're exactly the thrust of 10 of these ion thrusters, which is 54 newtons altogether, leading to a burn time of 63 days. And then we have enormous solar panels to power them, and we have the RCS ports. And actually RCS ports run on MMH and Mon 3. We don't have any radiators on the lander, we just have the full complement of multi-layer insulation MLI layers, and that proved to be enough, but maybe I'll put radiators in the future. Here I'm separating off the payload as a sub-assembly to see how much delta V the ion stage will actually give us, and also how to reduce the mass to 26 tons. So we're going to underfuel something, and initially I was going to underfuel the xenon gas tank, but then I decided to underfuel the hydrogen and oxygen. You can look at it in two different ways. One, it's easier to transfer the xenon gas, so we should underfuel that and then fuel that up with a subsequent mission. Or we should underfuel the hydrogen and oxygen because it's got boil off, and so we'll just top it off at that time with the refueling mission. So the whole thing is 36 tons. And I decided to go with the Hydrolox underfueling, so that's what I'm doing here. And we'll refuel the Hydrolox with another shuttle launch. The total delta V that we saw with the ion stage with a fully fueled lander was over 9,000 meters per second, and we're looking to require about 6,400 for the transfer because it spirals out, so it's double the normal transfer to lunar orbit, and then we need about double the amount for capture, so that's 1,600 if we wanted to get to a low orbit, so 8,000 altogether is what we are aiming for, and we've got more than that. So anyway, here is the shuttle launch. This is Columbia. Obviously this ends up being a bit of an alternate history, but this is not a what-if thing that I'm proposing. This would never have happened. So, I mean, it's just an interesting implementation of ion engines. Unlike alternate histories, I'm not claiming that this is a logical sequence of events. But it is looking good, at least. There is that. I generally don't like alternate histories. Especially if they're trying to be serious about it, they're trying to assert things that they believe, they create the alternate history to assert a particular point of view, and they're usually wrong. I don't mind something like Fallout though, which is not trying to be serious about it. If it's just a humorous endeavor, it's fine. And here we are making orbit. But normally I like to be more future looking. I only studied the older rockets and older missions so that I could come up with new things. My goal is futuristic things, and one reason I'm doing this on the shuttle is not to say that this would have happened with the shuttle, but rather to demonstrate the efficacy of ion engines for this purpose, especially if we can control boil off on the tanks. And again, we're not using even radiators on the Hydrolox tanks here, but Real Fuels was satisfied that we didn't have substantial boil off, so that was good enough. With the payload out, we wait for the opportunity to come back with the shuttle, so I'm doing the full thing. We're going to be doing the shuttle returns. However, at this point, there was a flaw that I didn't realize. Here, I'm dumping some of the fuel to make sure the balance is okay, because we didn't do that much in orbit, so it had too much fuel. And here I'm using the OPS 3D orbit planner, making sure everything's in green, though after time warping then it gets messed up again, I have to tweak it again. But the main thing is to keep an eye on the target periapsis that it has and make sure that after the deorbit burn we're matching that periapsis. So Once we've got that, we've got the entry guidance. That's OPS3. So there's the shuttle and the scripts from Giulio Dondi, and they all work great. The problem here is that Edwards Air Force Base, which is supposed to be there, is not there right now because of a conflict with RSS Reborn. Basically, with normal real solar system, when you address where to place it, you say Kerbin, even though it's Earth. It's still called Kerbin. RSS Reborn rewrites that and calls the planet Earth, and so when you place things using the PQS City 2 thing, which is the patch way I place Edwards Air Force Base, you have to say Earth. So you just have to change it. And now that there's an asterisk to that. It really depends on the mod load order, because here in this install, Cape Canaveral HD still says Kerbin, but it's loading at a different time than my terrain for Edwards Air Force Base was. And for some reason, it was all right. So it loads. But in a different install, it's not all right. And then I have to change it to Earth. So it's weird. Anyway, here's the shell coming back down, not realizing that Edwards Air Force Base is not there. And so the height that it's set to land at is too high, right? Because the terrain actually sits above the regular terrain in real solar system, and so it's aiming for this height here. It thinks it should have touched down, well, it's close to touching down here, and then it's not. So it's going to ultimately stall, and we're going to see what happens then. So you can see the vertical speed at the bottom is increasing in a negative direction because it's not getting as much lift. It's trying to hold this altitude, thinking that this is the right altitude. And then past 60 meters per second, it just stalls and doesn't have control, but somehow it manages to just lose the body flap and elevons. And then everything's fine. No, I mean, well, it's not the worst that could have happened. Let's put it that way. So obviously, I then realized what had happened and snuck the Edwards Air Force Base terrain back in, and we'll see what happens on the next mission. The next mission is to refuel the lander, and if you watch the recent Realism Overhaul Sandbox videos, you know that I've made a custom Centaur that's meant to be a service module. I decided to just use that tank as my little refueling tank, and that's because it's got the RCS ports that are configured to dock, unlike any other regular stage, which they often just have enough to rotate instead of translate. This has the RCS thrusters, so it can do translation and rotation. It also already has a controller in it, so it's all just one very simple package. All it needs is a docking port and it's ready to go. It's got the fuel cells in. You see the wonderful volumetric clouds from BlackRack there, as modified by RSS Reborn. Somebody in the stream on the next day, not the day that I did this part, asked me about my mods, and so I actually brought up the game data window and showed everything and mentioned them all. And so that'll be in the next video. I pointed out that the script always ends up at a relative inclination of 0.07. This is regardless of whether I'm rendezvousing with the moon, well, when I say rendezvousing, I'm lining up with the moon, or rendezvousing with a spacecraft like this. It doesn't matter, it always goes to 0.07. I guess it's a James Bond reference, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I'll go over all the mods in the next video very, very quickly and show you what game data looks like for this install. But it's just a shuttle install, and it's just for the things I do. And the mods are constantly changing as we dock the refueler to that and start refueling. We totally don't need all the fuel in it. It is way bigger than the actual lander stage, so it ends up being like a third left in there, more than a third left. But I have a lot of different installs. I have 18 active KSP installs right now, and when I decide to do something, I'll often take out some mods and put other mods in, just to do that thing. a lot of the things that I take out and put back in are the mods I created myself. I just created a new part like the Centaur stage that we have here that is configured as a service module. There's a special part. I put it in just, for the previous video. And so there's a lot of that going on, and some of those parts aren't even released, so I don't even know how to tell you what mods I'm using half the time. So yeah, between having 18 installs and having the whole swapping going on, and normally these installs having like 100 mods, it's tough. So my apologies for not always having a list ready. But anyway, here we go, coming back down. The problem this time is that for some reason the re-entry script doesn't have the right location for the runway at Edwards. And I don't know why that is. I know I measured it out in this save before, and I haven't changed the location of Edwards, even though we had to make it appear properly. But in this install, I had a little runway measuring rover, and so I know that I had measured it out before for the sake of this re-entry script, but it had the wrong location. What can I say? So during the following stream, I measured out the runway again to make sure it was okay, and we will get it down properly on the third mission. So it's 3 total to launch this lunar landing mission. 3 shuttle missions, which is pretty good. You're talking about total up mass of 78 tons, really less than 78 tons, because on this mission, the second mission, we didn't use all the fuel, and the stage is under 20 tons, I think. So we're talking less than 75 tons, and that's largely due to hydrolocks being used and also the ion engine. And the total amount of xenon gas is about 11 tons. That's less than 11 tons. So because we now have the terrain, but the location was wrong, the terrain was actually higher than expected. So it was trying to land a little bit lower in this location, but that was wrong. And so it did a belly landing. And it was looking alright too, but then the game paused and took our elevons. Alright, so that's been it. Nothing wrong with the scripts, it's just been the other things. And that's the beginning of our lunar landing mission with the shuttle. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.